Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. Great to have you here, and it's time for our monthly Minion Masters Meta review. We got a lot to go through, and be sure to stick around to the end because I'm going to introduce you to a website that might be of interest to you. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Right, let's dive in. So as always, I've been scraping the leaderboards all this month to get hold of a load of information. So we've scraped over 35,000 decks, over 350,000 cards, and this is what we've found. Right, so let's have a look at our overall master popularity for the current season, which of course is version 2.15. So we've got our chart here. We've got a bar for each of the masters. The yellow part of the bar is solos, the red is randoms, and the blue is pre-mades. So we can see here that Morelia is overall the master of choice, closely followed by Stormbringer and Diona, and it looks like Ratbo bringing up third place. Valorian has seen the biggest increase of play this season for some reason, shortly followed behind by Mordar. Ratbo's dropped off a bit, as has Wrecked. But let's have a look at this data in a slightly different format so we can compare it to last season. Right, pie charts. On the left is the pie chart for the master popularity last season, and on the right for this season. So last season we can see that overall Stormbringer was first, Morelia, Diona, and then Ratbo. This season Morelia has jumped ahead of Stormbringer into first place. Diona's still in third, and Ratbo still in fourth. So that's the overall popularity in the ranked modes. But let's have a look at the ranked modes on their own and see if we can glean a little bit more info. So let's have a look at solos. Again, last season on the left, this season on the right. And we can see that Diona is still the #1 choice. Whereas last season, Volko was second. Volko's now dropped down to 5th, I think that is. Milloween jumped up from 3rd to 2nd. Ratbo jumping up a little bit. So Tronvir overall has seen the biggest increase in play. And I think people are really starting to realise how they can take advantage of his ult perk, where you spend mana on either buildings, spells, or minions, and then you get the appropriate rune. I've been playing an accursed version of Tronvir, which has a lot of spells and gives us a lot of ancestors, and that has felt very strong and is possibly, definitely going to get nerfed in the next patch. So Tronvir has seen the biggest increase in play, although it's still a fairly underplayed master compared to all the others there. We can see Tronvir only at 7%, that sort of light orange colour. Volko has dropped off quite a lot, as has Wrecked. So those are your masters overall in solos. Diona still reigning strong. And I think, again, talking about balance changes, I think next season we might see some nerfs to Diona's traps. Right, let's have a look at 2v2 randoms. Last season, Morelia was king, and she still is. I guess we should call her queen. So last season it was Morelia, Apep, Diona. This season it's Morelia, King Puff jumping up a bit, as well as Tronvir. And if we look at the big changes, King Puff's had the biggest increase, followed by Tronvir and Valorian. Setsu dropping off quite a lot, even though she was pretty underplayed anyway. And Diona dropping off as well. Diona really shining in solos, but not so much here in randoms. And just a reminder, we do have the average mana costs at the bottom. They tend to not really change much. So if you're a new player, just have a look at an average mana cost between sort of 3 to 4.5, depending on the kind of deck you're playing. Right, and then let's close out the ranked master popularity by looking at pre-mades. And here we see again Stormbringer still #1, that lightish orange colour, followed by Ratbo, but Mordar eating into that, as well as Diona. So if we look at the biggest changes, Volko's actually seen quite a big increase in play, although not one of the heaviest played masters, but the biggest increase season on season. Mordar as well has gone up quite a lot. I remember Mordar's ult perk was changed last season, Was it a buff? Was it a nerf? Depends on the situation. But the alt perk, the Tomb of the Deathless, when you revive something, it revives at the tombstone rather than the place where it died. It was also bugged as well, where I think the things at perk 2 onwards were supposed to revive with haste and spirit, but they didn't have haste. So that should be fixed in the next patch, and that could make Mordor stronger. Now, Ratbow dropping off quite a lot. You can see it's still in second place, because Stormbringer and Ratbow really dominated in 2.14 and the previous seasons as well. But Ratbow dropped off quite a lot, 17% down to 11%. And I think there might be another nerf coming for Ratbow. Tronvir dropping off as well in pre-mades. So that's the master popularity for ranked. But let's have a look at draft. Remember, draft is the mode where you build a deck based on the sort of random options you get. You choose a master from 3 masters, and you choose each card from 3 random cards. So definitely not as easy to draw information from as the constructed data, because there is this random nature to it. But we can still, with a big enough data set, get a good idea of what's going on out there. And if you're a drafter and you want a bit of information as to what you should be taking based on, you know, what the leaderboards are showing, this will really help you. So last season, Morelia, Tronvir, and Diona. This season, Tronvir, Diona, Morelia. So they're all 3 there. They're all quite similar. So not really too much has changed. They've just changed their position a little bit. But Tronvir has seen an increase, as has Volko. Morelia and Stormbringer have been dropping off there in draft. Okay, so that's the end of the Masters. Let's have a look at the rarity composition. So if you're new to Minion Masters, there are 4 rarities of cards: Common, Rare, Supreme, and Legendary. And newer players might think you just want a full deck of Legendaries and that's going to be the best and the game's really pay to win. But that's really not the case, and we can really illustrate that here. So we've got 2 rows of graphs. The top row is for this season, the bottom row is for last season. We've got solos, randoms, and pre-mades, and as you can see, the decks are mostly made of common, the green cards, and rare, the blue cards. Also with Supreme and Legendaries in there, but just to show that you don't need all Legendaries. Minion Masters is definitely not pay to win. Right. What I should say is we go through a lot of data in these videos, so if you need to go back and visit it, if you need to pause it, screenshot it, whatever you need to do to get the information out, please go ahead and do it. Right, factions. We have 9 factions in the game, which is like kind of like families of cards. And as is generally the case, Voidborn is the leading faction. One thing, as we always mention, is not all of the cards have the same amount of... Sorry, not all the factions have the same amount of cards within them. So I think Voidborn is probably one of the biggest factions. So overall, Voidborn, Accursed, Scrat. Nothing's really changed from the top 3 from last time. Zenchi's gone up a little bit. Crystal Elf has dropped down a little bit, but not too much has changed. And if you want to have a look on your own time at something a little bit more specific, then we've broken this down into the different game modes. So we can see Voidborn ruling in solos, Accursed in randoms, and back to Voidborn in pre-mates. Wildcards. So Minion Masters has wildcards. Wildcards allow you to duplicate cards in your decks. You can have up to 3 copies of 1 card or 2 copies of 2 cards, allowing you to use 2 wildcards. No wildcards in solos, no wildcards in pre-made, so only in randoms. And we can see with the green, no wildcards. Less people wildcarding this season, which is good. And I think the reason for that is that in the monthly balance changes, we've seen a lot of the most egregious wildcarded cards have their copies removed, and we're going to see that again in the next patch. So less people wildcarding overall. But what are people wildcarding when they choose to do so? Right, Spirit Vessel suddenly massively wildcarded. So remember Spirit Vessel, the little guy that drops a spirit when he dies. So he's gone up hugely. And if I just explain to you the sort of the format of this slide, which we'll see many times going forward. So we have each of the cards. So let's have a look, for example, at the Spirit Vessel. So it has a colour. In this case, green. Green indicates the rank has increased from last month. Red indicates it's dropped down. White is a new card, which we currently don't have. And black means it's the same rank as before. Each card also has 2 numbers. Again, if we look at the Spirit Vessel, the top left number is its current rank, number 1. And the top right is its previous rank, which was 43. So Spirit Vessel has gone up massively. And if we look at the actual change, the percentage change, Spirit Vessel has the biggest increase. So the top wildcarded cards we can see here: Spirit Vessel, Blade Star, Blind Date, Crystal Sentry, so on and so forth. So as we mentioned, Spirit Vessel and Blind Date have gone up a lot, but what has come down? Skeleton Crew has dropped off of there. That was the wild card of choice, really, but that had its copies removed in the last patch. The Skeleton Crew is no longer on the wild card situation. Ankahesh was also wild carded a lot, and again, I think that had been removed in the last patch. Or it's going to be in the next patch. I can't remember. But it has been nerfed. No, I think it's getting just a health nerf in the next patch, if I remember correctly. And Blast Monster dropped off as well, and I think that did get a rebalance, but it hasn't really done much for the card. Right, so those are the top wild cards. Now, let's have a look at the top overall cards. So these are the top cards overall in ranked modes: solos, pre-mades, randoms. And we can see here, Skeleton Crew still number 1, Swarmers still number 2, Heal Puff still number 3. So when we're talking about the top cards here, we're not talking about these hugely powerful cards. We're talking about these little niche cards in some situations that are just do what they need to do. No bells and whistles, but they are reliable. Remember, Skeleton Crew and Swarmers, they're split in a way that you can put them on a bridge and they can walk backwards, which is one of their huge strengths. Same with Slitherbound. So those are the top cards overall. If we look at the increases, Shroomer has gone up the most, and that of course did get a buff in the last patch. Anything else here that's particularly interesting to mention? Crystal Sentry's gone up a lot. Blast Monster, as we mentioned before, has dropped off quite a lot. Again, that was due to the rebalance. I think that might get a buff in the next patch, if I remember correctly. So those are the top cards. Interestingly, again, going back to our rarity discussion where we talked about not having to have a full deck of legendaries, the top 27 cards as shown here, only 2 of them are legendaries. That's Morgul the Swarmer King and Ankahesh the Big Spider Desert's Doom. 16 of them, over half of them, were common, the most basic cards in the game. And as always, this always seems to be the case, when we look at our overall analysis, every single card was seen on the leaderboard at least once. But there is one card that was used less than all the others, only 6 times. Now pause the video now and quickly go type a comment. Let me know, what do you think was the least played card overall on the leaderboards? There's one that's lower than all the others, only 6 times. Pause the video, leave a comment. Right, so that's the overall cards. Let's break them down a little bit now. So these are the top cards, non-spells. And the reason we break it down is we've got spells and non-spells. Generally, when you're building a deck, those are the 2 categories you're thinking of. Let me build a deck with 7 minions, stroke buildings, and 3 spells, for example. And then you sort of make your decisions based within that. So here we have the top cards, non-spells. So that's, again, minions and buildings. And we have solos, randoms, and pre-mades. And as we can see from before, when we looked at the top cards overall, we can see a lot of similarities here. So Skeleton Crew really dominating, showing on all of the top 9s there. Heal Puff again. And of course, once we get into the 2v2 side of things, we start seeing cards that are better against big minions, cards that are better against multiple minions. So for example, Ankahesh, Desert's Doom, in 4th place in there in randoms, Cursebearer in 7th. These are cards that are great at dealing with big units and things like the Whirly Scrat, killing multiple things. So those are the top cards, non-spells. But then let's have a look at the accompanying top spells. And we get a similar sort of thing here, where the bigger removal spells, you tend to see them more in 2v2s than you do in solos. For example, Beam of Doom there in pre-mades in 6th place. Very, very powerful removal, but it's more powerful the more stuff it hits. So we can see, if we look at solos, Daggerfall is still the #1 choice. Chain Lightning still in the top 3, as is Unholy Ground. And there's been some discussions about whether Unholy Ground is too strong, but I don't think that we've had any real particularly good suggestions of how it could be nerfed appropriately. Somebody suggested not allowing it to spawn skeletons on the opposing side of the field, which will be a nerf, but I think it's actually a massive nerf that isn't particularly needed. Now, one thing we can see in solos is we do have some accursed cards, accursed spells there, which suggests maybe accursed decks, although Unholy Ground and Restless Dead, we've definitely seen them played outside of accursed decks. Whereas if we look at randoms in 6th place, Toll of the Dead, that is a card that you will only find in either A, accursed decks, or B, the decks of people that don't know how to play the game. Right, so those are the top spells. Now, let's have a look at the top legendaries. So as we went through before, you don't need a deck full of legendaries, but legendaries are cool, right? They're cool to build, they're cool to spin from the power tokens and build decks around. And if you are a newer player and you're desperately wanting to get some legendaries, if you've got some shards that you really want to spend, then this will give you a good idea of what to go for. And of course, reminder, think about the legendaries when if you're crafting them, because some of them are really unique and will only go in specific decks and you need to build around them. Others, you know, are very versatile and will go in sort of anything. Right, so solos, we've got Morgul, the Swarmer King. Ankahesh still there, which is kind of interesting because Ankahesh is the kind of card that really excels at killing big units, which we don't see too often in solos compared to randoms and pre-mates. But I think because it's quite a chunky thing, it does have that thick hide, which makes it difficult to deal with Horde, it can get a lot of value just because it takes your opponent time to deal with it. Jinglong is up to 3rd from 4th. Denver dropping down a little bit, and I expect Denver to get a nerf in the next patch as well, because he is definitely very powerful. And again, when we get to 2v2s here, we start to see more of the units that deal with lots of stuff at the same time. So things like the Reconator, really good AoE, 2nd place there in randoms, also in 8th in pre-mades. And we've seen a lot more Jezra this season as well. You can see there in pre-mades, Jezra in 7th, up from 34th. And I've definitely seen her in all sort of different play modes. So people starting to use Jezra and respect Jezra a little more. She has kind of an awkward attack to play into. Her attack is like kind of like a whirly scrat, so you can't play Horde into her. And of course, when she gets kills, that gives her the value with her tier, or is it tear? I can't remember. Reducing in cost. Right, so that's the legendaries. Overall, Ankahesh, Desert's Doom, the standout legendary. But if you're desperately thinking about crafting, consider that that's going to get nerfed in the next patch. Morgul, the Swarmer King, the Veil Stalker, Reconator, and Jinglong are the top 5 legendaries overall. Okay, so when we looked at the Masters, we also looked at the Masters within Draft. So let's have a look at the cards within Draft. Again, you know, there is often a lot of changes in these top cards, just simply because you can't rely on getting the same cards from draft to draft run, right? You just get what you're given and you have to make the best of it. But again, if we have a big enough data set, then hopefully we can draw something interesting from it. And straight away we can see Cleaver is the top draft choice, and Cleaver's gone up from 66th to 1st. Nothing's really changed about the Cleaver. Nothing too much, I imagine, has changed regarding what the Cleaver is good against, but a huge shift there. Shadow Whelp's up to 2nd from 4th, Berserker 3rd, down from 1st, so some little changes and also some big changes. So Cleaver did have the biggest overall swing, going up massively, as did Bara the Witch Wolf. Morgul the Swarmer King dropped off the most, Karmic, also Shield Guard of Light, so some big changes. And of course, we often see things here that are heavily played in Draft that we don't see quite so much in other modes. For example, Sniper Squad, you're very rarely going to see that comparatively in ranked modes because everyone has a removal for them. But when we get to Draft and you can't rely on everyone having that removal, then things like the Sniper Squad suddenly become far more playable. And they're in 16th, up from 35th. I'm not sure what they are in ranked, but they will be a lot lower for sure. And just to compare ranked to draft, these are the top 5 cards. When we compare, these are the cards that are played more in draft compared to how they're played in ranked. So those top 5 are Bara, Jade Spark Watchers, Chief Icebreaker Bolf, Magnetic Bombs, and Bazooka Scrat. So those are the ones that are played more in draft than ranked. And the opposite side of that, the cards that are played less in draft than ranked. And of course, these are the ones that are mostly in that situation. So Grasping Thorns, Jinglong, Toll of the Dead, Slitherbound, and Hypnotize. A lot of those make sense. Grasping Thorns we rarely see outside of a curse decks, and you're very unlikely to build in a curse deck in draft. Jinglong, you need spell synergy with it, potentially also some Zen Chi synergy, which you can't rely on in draft. Toll of the Dead, again a cursed, so it makes sense why they're played a lot less in draft than they are in ranked. And excitingly for next season, there's going to be more of the cards within the game available in draft. So there's been always this list of excluded cards for specific reasons. A lot of the cards that have abilities, they've always been excluded, I think. But they didn't need to be. That was... Okay, we don't need to go into this in too much detail, but there was always this thing where things were excluded from future cards, which also excluded them from draft. But that can be done independently now, so hopefully we get more cards in draft. That's the be-all and end-all, really. Right. Okay, we looked at the top cards, non-spells in draft. Let's have a look at the top spells in draft. So Future Past, the top spell, up from 4th. Pincer of Dread in 2nd, up from 11th. Kamikaze Zeppelin, that's one that you don't see too much outside of draft. But here, it's the 3rd choice. Ardent Argus is, I always say that wrong, Ardent Aegis. I think that's how it is. Ardent Aegis. Now, that's interesting because you kind of want to use that on an Empyrean card, which you can't guarantee that synergy in draft, but people still thinking that that's a good choice. And if we look at the big changes, Pincer of Dread, it has gone up the most, as with Kamikaze Zeppelin. What has dropped off? Chain Lightning dropped off the most, Last Stand, and Lightning Bolt. So if you screenshot this or whatever and keep this to hand and you're building a draft deck, this gives you a good idea of what to choose. Don't blindly choose it. Think about what best fits into your deck, but this will certainly help you out with that. Right, we've looked at the Masters, we've looked at the cards. If we put them together, what do we get? We get decks. Let's have a look at the top decks. Now, the way the top deck grading works is basically within my spreadsheet, I just look at the decks that have the highest ranks and the decks that are comprised of the highest ranked cards. And then we put that together, and then we should get decks that appear highly on the leaderboard with very, very heavily played cards. And then, we can assume that that is what is the best. We don't have win data, but if you stay until the end of the video, I'll tell you a little bit more about how we can look at win data. But let's go into the solo decks here. So the top deck here, Tronvir. We can't tell from the leaderboard what alt perk, if any, is being used. So unsure here what is being used. But we can see it. We got a cheap deck, Bridge Grab. We got the Shroomer that did get buffed, and Denver, the Last King, who is very strong at the moment. Next up, we have a nice control Apep deck. We have Simulacrum. So we have Simulacrum there, which is going to copy one of our opponent's cards, minions. But we don't have any tech to buff it. So it's interesting to use Simulacrum without any tech. Defenso Chopper's really, really strong. It gives you great defense if someone's going to bats. Someone uses Prop Horde. I've been using it a lot this season, and it gets a lot of value. Scotty there for the DPS. Right, next up we have a really cheap Milloween deck. A smattering of spells. A lot of cheap control cards. And of course, you're going to get that Golem. And again, we can't tell whether it's going to be an alt perk or not. But her alt perk, the Zanian spell perk, does seem very strong. Next up we have Diona. Some of these decks are very, very similar. Again, with Denver as the sort of the tower piece, the head of the deck, and some cheap cards to grab things. Now, on the last one on this is it's a Ratbo deck, and interestingly, some of these decks will be good against specific other decks. Like the Dragon Pack could be really good against Denver, things like that. But of course, then you can see the next step of that is that the decks that are running Denver have things like the Unholy Ground to help protect it against things like the Dragon Pack. So this is really quite interesting to look at how these decks may interact with each other. Because of course, when we get at the top of the leaderboard, these players will be playing against each other. Right, the next page of decks we've got... Oh yeah, one thing I should mention is we've got the top deck for each master. So for whatever master you're looking for, we will have the deck for you. Right, so again, a similar deck with Volko. Yeah, fairly similar with Wrecked. King Puff, more multi-minions to get those Night Puffs at perk 3. We see Stormbringer, quite an aggressive Stormbringer there, not too much range. Mordar, again, we can't tell which Mordar perk he's using. This could use the normal perk, it's got some good reses, has some dodgy reses as well, but if you use your Tombstone sensibly, which is a lot more easy in solos than it is in 2v2, because it's just less hectic, then you can get the revives that you want. You know, maybe often timing your Tombstone around your rock rifles, for example. Right, next up, we have Valorian. A heavier deck than we've seen on the other ones, but lots of stuff here that's going to be sort of control-wise. Whirly Scrat's going to be annoying to play into, as is Morgul the Swarmer King. And if you get a bunch of stuff together, it will get hypnotized. Right, Setsu. This is an interesting Setsu deck, because normally Setsu will have a lot of spells. Only a couple of spells in here with this deck. So it's quite an aggro deck. Maybe not trying to get to the late game. And if it does, maybe take advantage of Setsu's ult perk 3 instead of the standard perk 3. Next up we have Morelia. And of course Morelia has the spell book with the spell reduction. So you ideally want to have 3 4+ mana spells, which we have in the form of Chain Lightning, Avalanche, and Slithering Summons. And then again we have quite an aggro spirit-based Ravager deck. Right. Now let's switch to randoms, and if you look at the little tabs across the top of that original top blade star, get me words out, that means they're wildcarded. Remember, randoms is the only mode that has wildcards. I mean, you can wildcard in draft, but that's fairly by and by. So things get a little bit heavier, and we see a lot more things like Ankahesh, Reconator, Cursebearer, Blade Star, just, you know, more things that are better against more stuff, if you know what I mean. AoE is kind of key when we get to 2v2s. Okay, so we'll just whiz through this section a little bit. So we got Stormbringer with 3 Crystal Sentries. Then we have an APEP Future deck. Nice and cheap. Defenso's really good at just delaying things, and of course if things get a little bit out of hand, you have the Rockin' Roller to come down and smack everything. Fairly cheap Diona deck with the Spider top end, which is very similar to this Valorian deck, if not actually identical. And then we see a lot heavier Wreck deck here. This is going to be fairly aggro. And then closing out randoms, we have a Ratbo deck. We have a Mordar deck. Again, can't really tell what perk it's using. And we see a Rimagal Ravager deck. And again, a Setsu deck. This time only has 2 spells, and they're heavy spells. So it's going to be aggro. It's not going to be taking advantage of her perk 3 too much. Right, moving on, we get to pre-mades. And as always, we need to preface the fact that pre-made decks sometimes are specifically built to work alongside another specific deck. We can't tell that from our data, so we just have to keep that in mind. So if you see like a random Guardian in a deck with no other crystal units, that's a good idea that there's going to be an associated accompanying deck with crystals in it. Okay, so the top deck here, we see Tromvir with Jezra as the spearhead of the deck. Ion Grenade is, it's actually very strong, of course, you do have to make sure you've got tech to power it. So we've got some Outlander cards in the form of Plasma Marines, Drone Buzzers, and the Protocol Assassin. Right, next up we have a Stormbringer deck. Again, with Iron Grenade, bunch of tech in there. Now we see Ratbow with so the Divine Warrior, really good to just soak up a ton of damage. And the Arcane Bolt, really good to deal with annoying things like the Berserker, for example. That's probably the target of choice for the Arcane Bolt. Zapinator as well, really good. Right, next up we have a Volko deck and a Morelia deck. This time Morelia doesn't have the spells for the spell reduction, so won't be using that part of the spell book. Could also be using the alt perk as well, of course. Right, next up for pre-mades, we have an APEP deck. Again with the spider in it. Valorian here, headed by the Protocol Assassin. And you can see a lot of the decks are similar. They have these cheap cards to help control the bridges, and then the powerful cards to put on the pressure or deal with the opposing push. Again, Jezra in this Diona deck. Pretty aggro Ravager deck there. And King Puff. Again, with King Puff you tend to find a lot of multi-minions to generate those Night Puffs that are also powerful at perk 3. And closing out the deck situation, we have Setsu. So this is more of a normal, quote-unquote, Setsu deck. We have a lot of these spells, cheap spells to help trigger that reload and that piercing shot at perk 3. And Jezra. So you've got the Whirly Scrat and Jezra, which is like a Whirly Scrat on steroids. Next up we have Mordor. Again, we can't tell what Mordor perk is being used. There are a couple of... well, the Sewer Scrat in there, you want to be careful you don't want to res. The Zip Zapinator, you want to be careful you don't res the Piloted Scrat. But either of the perks will work fine there. Powerful Wreck deck. And closing out, Milo Ween. Right. Now the next section we're going to go through super fast. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to whip it up on the screen. Because we don't want this video to be 3 hours long. So if you do want to see the extra information that's the end here, just play it back slowly, screenshot it, whatever you need to do. Right, okay, let's go. So these are the top cards overall in 1v1. Non-spells in 1v1. Top spells in 1v1. Top legendaries in 1v1. And we're going to do the same thing for randoms. Top cards overall in randoms. Non-spells, spells, legendaries, and you guessed it, the same for pre-mades. Top cards in pre-mades, non-spells, spells, and legendaries. Right, the next section is going to be even quicker, where we're going to look at the top cards per mode, per master. So, if you're building decks for specific masters and you want to see which are the most used cards for that particular master, this is for you. Go! APEP. Solos. Randoms. Pre-mates. Diona in solos. Randoms. Pre-mates. King Puff in solos. Randoms, pre-mades, and again Milloween here in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Mordor solos, randoms, pre-mades, Morelia solos, randoms, pre-mades, wrecked in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Ratbow in solos, Ratbow in randoms, Ratbow in pre-mades, Ravager in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Setsu in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Stormbringer in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Tronvir in solos, randoms, pre-mades, Florian, almost there. Solos, randoms, pre-mades, Volko in solos, randoms, and pre-mades. Guys, well done. We got through all of that. A huge amount of data. Remember, if you need to go back, watch it again, slow motion, screenshot it, whatever you need to do, make sure you do that to get the most out of it. A lot of data there. Hopefully that should be useful to newer players as well as experienced players. And speaking about useful, I just want to draw your attention to a website that has actually been around for a while, but you might find it useful. And this is the Minion Masters Manager. Now, if you go to Google, type Minion Masters Manager, you will find it. If you want to go directly to it, minionmastersmanager.web.app. And as always, we'll put the link in the description for you. So there's a lot you can do on this website. So you can build your decks, stuff like that. There's lots of sort of information. You can look at other people's decks, all sorts of things. But the two things I wanted to draw your attention to specifically, as you may or may not know, Minion Masters matchmaking is driven by ELO. And you can go here and you can check your ELO. Because one of the really awkward things about ELO is you can't see it in the game. It controls the matchmaking, but you can't see it in the game. It's crazy. But here you can see it. So if you want to have a look at your ELO, not only will it show your ELO, it will show you how you compare to everyone else. So it might show your ELO is this, and you're the 500th player in solos, or the 3rd player in randoms. Stuff like that. And you can use that to see how you're doing compared to others, and you can track it as well. This is updated once every 24 hours. And it tells you exactly how to use it here. So do that. And then one of the other things I wanted to draw your attention to are these public stats. Now, with the balancing of Minimasters, the devs have let the community balance the game. So we come up with suggestions, and one of the things we use to drive these suggestions is the data. Now, the devs have started doing this only over the last sort of 4 or 5 months, where a couple of weeks into the season, they'll give us a spreadsheet that shows the play rate and the win rate of cards, of masters, and of master perks. So we can really see what stuff is overperforming, underperforming, and may need some adjustment. And what the people behind this website have done, which is Radai Shen and Volvox, I believe, thanks to them, is they've put all this information here in a really useful and easy to use format. So if you want to have a look at win rates for particular cards, for particular masters, you can do that here. So lots of cool stuff there. Definitely check it out. Link in the description. Thanks to the guys for putting that together. Right, that's it. Guys, thanks so much for sticking with me. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful, if you want to see more of it, make sure you drop a subscription if you haven't already, and give it a thumbs up. Again, as we mentioned earlier, let me know in the comments, what do you think was the least played card? Remember, there's one card out of all of the cards that was played less than the rest. Have a guess. Maybe you get a prize. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for your time. My name's Bad as Fish, and I'll see you again soon here in the fish tank. It's that time. Awkward wave time.